What if the fastest way to stand out wasn't about being louder, but about being more useful? Today we're asking, how can I be so useful they can't ignore me?
And we'll break down what it looks like with heart, strategy, and a handful of super practical ways to serve on purpose.
Welcome to the Big Life Podcast, where dreams aren't just imagined, they're built brick by brick, belief by belief. Hosted by Neal Oates Jr. and Robin Lewis, this show is your invitation to discover your amazing capabilities, invest in your growth, and unleash your potential in ways you've only dreamed of. Join Neal and Robin as they dive deep into stories, insights, and tools designed to inspire you to show up big, live intentionally, and give yourself away for the betterment of those around you. Get ready to rise to what you're truly worthy of. The Big Life starts now.
Welcome to the Big Life, everyone, where we help purpose-driven leaders live boldly, lead clearly, and build a life that lasts. I'm Robin.
And I'm Neal Oates Jr. If you're tired of waiting to be noticed or wondering if your contribution even matters, this episode is for you.
So you've probably heard this quote by Steve Martin. I love the quote. It says, "Be so good, they can't ignore you." What a great quote. Be so good. Think about this coming from the context of an actor, Steve Martin. Be so good, they can't ignore you. But we're going to remix that today. And what we're suggesting is be so useful, they can't ignore you.
So, Robin, first of all, good to see you, sir. Always an honor and a pleasure. And I'm not surprised that you would like this quote. And here's why when I say you wouldn't, I'm not surprised that you like this quote. It's because usefulness isn't about being impressive. It's about being a blessing, right? It's not about hype. It's about help. And you are someone that embodies both usefulness and helpfulness, sir.
Yes. And so what we want our listeners to hear today is when you do that consistently, people do notice, because useful people become essential people. You know, if you're making a difference, people are going to want you to be around.
And so really quickly, Robin, as we go forward, I want our listeners to know that there are three insights, right? Three big insights as we talk about this usefulness so that we can't be ignored, so that people will feel us, see us, and understand that we are present, but also that we as individuals, that we can show up fully and be useful while gaining positions, while moving through life. So if you would, I would love for you to start walking us through these insights for us, Robin.
Yes, sir. And Neal, just before I do, I want to put you on the spot for a moment, if you'd allow me. Put you on the spot. There is a quote, and I'm really putting you on the spot now, but there's a quote that you told me that your dad used to say when he talked about his life. So this is a part of his legacy.
Yep.
And I think it ties in so much with what we're talking about this morning. Do you want to share that?
Absolutely. And so thank you for remembering. And any chance that I get to honor my dad by sharing some of the lessons that he shared with me and that he ingrained in me, I'm always willing to do so. So we talk about the hype, right? And being famous or being known. My dad, he said that, son, I never want to be remembered. I want to be missed. So his goal in life was not to simply be remembered, because we remember a lot of mean, evil people, right? But the barometer that he wanted his life judged by is he going to be missed when he's not in the room? The greatest compliment, he said, that he ever receives, I know in business we say, is a referral, right? But in real life, my dad said, I want people to say, I wish Neal was here. Right? If Neal was in this environment, it would be better. It would be livelier. Maybe it would be calmer. It wouldn't be as stressful. And so when we talk about usefulness, so I want us to be as my dad wanted to be. When we are not around, we want to be so useful that people say, she's missed. That if he were here, if he had his hand in it, things would be dramatically better. And so I think that even starting right there and you bringing that up really does remind me of usefulness and being missed, not simply remembered.
It's so good. So thank you for sharing that, sir. And wow, you did well right on the spot like that. So the three insights that we want to share with you, our listeners today, starts with be genuinely good, but strategically placed. I actually learned this from one of my mentors years ago. He said, be genuine, but strategic. And that caused me to make some change. So you want to be genuine, but you also want to be strategic in the value that you add, who you add it to, and so on. And I realized that I was not being intentional with my value that I was offering or adding.
Here's what we found, Robin, and I know that as you mentioned, the realization that you had after having that conversation with your mentor is that many of us might experience this, and it can cause a little bit of inside of our spirit. But here's what I want to remind us of, or to share with us, is that it is not good enough to be good-hearted, right? Because we think if we lead with a good heart, that is okay. But many of us, especially if we're thinking about living the big life, if you want to make an impact, you need clarity and strategy. And here's what that means. That means showing up where and how your gifts can be most effective.
Right on. That's leadership, Neal. That's maturity. And that's how you stop being overlooked. So the idea is as we are strategic and we're useful, we're going to get noticed. All right. So
Before
this,
we move on, Robin, really
yeah,
quickly on that piece, I think that when we lead with a good heart and we believe that everything's going to work out, they're just going to see this thing. They're going to see that I have the right intentions. But oftentimes that's why we get burned out, because we aren't receiving recognition, because people aren't seeing it. And we often attribute that to their lack of awareness, their lack of understanding, their lack of care, when the reality is that we have not been strategic in how we show up. And ultimately, that's going to be a reflection on us.
yes. And it's so true. And I've been there. I can tell our listeners that I remember being a part of an organization and going to one of the leaders and asking them, why aren't you guys picking me? And, that's when one of the responses, and I won't go into the long response here, but it was a learn for me. But one of the responses that they told me was, what you need to do, Rob, is look for places where you can serve and jump in. Don't wait to be called on, right? If you see a need, if you see things that where you can serve the organization, jump in and serve. And so it's so true. I literally was at that point where I was questioning why they weren't picking me, Neal. So you're exactly right. I've been there. And
And
so,
so on that, Robin, I think that leads us into the second item, right? The second piece of this. And it's so important for all of us. One, we weren't sitting on the sideline, that we're also making sure that we're leading, because you talk about leadership and maturity. And what we're talking about right now requires a lot of leadership, yes, but even more maturity as men and women, especially those who are strivers and ambitious. We must have a level of maturity. But I think the second piece goes in fantastically. And this is where we are not supposed to just chase recognition. We're supposed to pursue usefulness. And I will say that many times in life, in business, I've gotten this piece wrong, right? I have chased recognition and not thought about usefulness. But here's the key. Stop focusing on being recognized. If we start focusing on being truly useful instead, great things are going to happen. And here are some super practical ways to do that. First, be active on others' platforms. And we're talking about social media or something like that, but be active, right? Like, comment, share their work for free. Don't ask for something in return. This one, Robin, is one that I love, and it has opened many doors for me. And that's be a connector. Introduce people who should know each other. And before I continue, I know our listeners, our audience might be tired of hearing this, but you and I are the result of a connector, of him introducing people who should know each other. And years later, we have a friendship, we have a brotherhood that I don't believe can be broken because someone decided to be a connector and introduce people who should know each other. Before I go any further, Robert, I would love to get your input on just those two: be active on others' platforms and be a connector.
Yeah, there is a book that Jeff Henderson wrote, What Do You Want to Be Known For? And one of the things he talked about, if we look at social media and the way most of us do social media, it's all about us. It's all about me. It's all about our organization. It's all about, we're trying to get people to like us. We're trying to get people to follow us. We're trying to, and what he suggested is, and he does this, he practices this, by the way, is that you really want to be focused on them, and you want to make sure and you connect to them, and you want, instead of them trying, if you trying to get them to follow you, follow them, encourage them, like what they're doing, engage with them. And so the idea there is that you are making yourself useful to those people on social media. I love the idea. The second one, Neal, is one of the things that I'm really trying to get more practical and more intentional about making that happen, and that is connecting others. I learned the other day that a friend of mine actually has a spreadsheet that he has set up where he has people's names on there, and he has information about what each person does and what they're looking for. And then he tries to match people. So he's very intentional about connecting people. And I'm at a place now in my life where I want to do that better. I want to be more intentional about making those connections. So I couldn't agree more with those practical tips that you shared.
So that's so exciting because I want to make sure that I'm not out here on an island with these ideas that I think are great, but in reality, they're absolutely worth nothing. And so I've got two more for us, Robin. The next one is focus on what you can give, not what you can get. That is a huge one. As you just mentioned, so many of us are focused on me, right? What's in it for me? How can I do? How can I advance? What can you do for me? So focus on what you can give, not what you can get. And then my last practical way might be one of the toughest of all of them, and that's to simply pay attention. Right? Pay attention, listen for what others need and want, and try to help. We've been told our entire lives, whether it was by our parents, our loved ones, colleagues, employers, pay attention. And you're like, I don't know if I have enough money to pay attention. And so this is one of those things that paying attention, and as you just mentioned, your friend having that spreadsheet, knowing what his friends, what his colleagues, what they're looking for, and intentionally trying to help is going to pay dividends when it comes to his usefulness. And if we will follow his lead, it will pay dividends for us in our future as well.
That is so good. I think another powerful one to share that's practical is to give without expectation. I know John Maxwell teaches to sow. Every day you sow seeds that add value to others. You know that one day you're going to reap a harvest, but don't focus on the harvest. Focus on the sowing. And it's the same idea here. Give without expectation. Helping someone to move forward, even if it never circles back to you, because that's what legacy is really all about. It's sowing seeds that add value to others.
And really quickly, Robin, even as you said that even if it never circles back to us, the truth is we know that it's going to come back to us. Maybe not from that same source, but it is going to come back to us. And here's the beauty. That kind of generosity that you're talking about, give with no expectation of return, that kind of generosity is unforgettable. And that's the kind of usefulness that makes you impossible to ignore.
It's so good. That is so good. The third one that we want to touch on is clarity creates impact. And so most people who feel stuck don't have a skill problem. They have a clarity problem.
Well, I want to go on the record as saying I think that's good news, right? Because so many times we're thinking I have to learn more, I have to be better. But maybe it's not that skill, as you just mentioned. It is the clarity. Can we communicate clearly? Can we understand? And here's what I love about what you just shared is that If I don't know what makes me valuable, how can I position it to serve? Right? So if you don't know what makes you valuable, how can you use that skill that does not need to be improved, but to serve others, to be more useful?
Yes, it's so true. And the more that we hone in on that, I've shared with Neal recently that I've been honing in on that better in this new season of my life. Who do I actually serve? It starts with there. Who am I called to serve? And how do I serve them? So how has God gifted me, positioned me to serve others best? What do I bring that lifts the load for others? What do I do that adds momentum and encouragement or solutions? Or in my case, I like to empower others. What do I do that empowers others? The more clear our audience, I'm sharing my experience with you to say to you, the more clear that you can be about the value that you bring is the better it's going to be. So having clarity, taking time. Neal and I talk about this a lot. And a lot of the clients that we work with, we help them with this. That's the idea of discovering themselves, discovering their strengths, their weaknesses, their talents, and so on, right? And the better that you can do that, the more clarity you have around that, is the more useful you will become.
Robin, before we continue, I want to bring something to our audience's attention. When you were talking about what do I bring that lifts the load, right? You mentioned some things or asked some questions that we don't typically think of as value or skill, right? What do I do that adds momentum? Maybe it's not gets it started, but just keeps it going, maybe speeds it up. What do I do? What do I add that brings encouragement? Right. And so we aren't thinking about momentum or encouragement as value adds, as being useful. Oftentimes we think of what you mentioned last, solutions. But could we just park here just for one quick moment and just talk about the value of momentum, encouragement, as opposed to always thinking that we have to be the one to bring answers? My wife knows that one of the things that at our church, when it comes time for decorating the campus for Christmas, I am not a Christmas tree fluffer. I am not a light hanger. Can I do it? Yes. Could I make sure that everything is unboxed and installed? Yes, I could. But I tell everyone, I am here to make your time more enjoyable. I'm not here to help you and for us to get everything done to shorten the time frame, like in terms of actual minutes or seconds. I'm here so that when you're engaged, when you have fun, all of a sudden the 3 hours that we spent feels like 45 minutes, right? And so I know my skill that I have, I know my talent, and then asking, how can I lighten this load? How can I ease everyone else's burden? We're going to have a good time. Could I be in a corner putting garland up on the wall? Yes, I could. Would it be effective? Yes, it would. Would it be the best use of my energy? No, it would not. So if you would just talk about that momentum and encouragement for a quick moment, Robin.
Yeah, I think it's really where the rubber meets the road. It's about you're placing the focus on others first of all, right? And you're placing your time and energy in an area or areas where you really bring good value. All of us have that. All of us have talent, have a skill set that others around us need. And as we are offering it, as we are developing it, nurturing it, getting better at it, and then offering it to help others, right? Is the G in the big, go serve, right? Give yourself away. And so it's about using who you are and what you bring to the table to add value to others. So yeah, I know it's Neal, and it's an area that I have grown in over the years. I didn't recognize all that I brought to the table, but it's over, asking questions, reflecting, digging, praying, try seeking out, who am I here to serve? What am I here to do? That type of thing. So it's also related to purpose and, finding out your passion and your strengths. The more that we can hone in on that is the better value that we are going to bring to others. That's the reality. And so it's about honing in on that rather than being recognized. It's about honing in on that, getting clarity around that so that you can bring that. One of the reasons why we do this podcast, Neal and I, is because we feel called to share value added information and stories to support the development of our listeners. We're here to add value, to empower you, for you to live the big life, to live into your potential. And we feel like because we have been people of, who continue to learn and grow and change and develop, and we continue to pursue living into our potential. We have, first of all, the experience to help others with that, and the passion, because we understand that, and we believe in people that, we can help others to do the same.
So Robin, right here, because we're talking about clarity, and here's why clarity is so important, just in a quick little closing part, is because once you're clear, once you have clarity, you stop chasing visibility and you start walking in value, as you mentioned. But in this time, this day and age, it's really hard to be clear about who you are, what you do, who you serve, the value that you bring. And I know we're going to do a wrap up in a moment, but I know as coaches, and you mentioned these are some of the biggest issues that many of our clients have, right? They have the marketing mind, and they're great relationally with individuals, but they aren't clear on what they do, who they are, who they serve, and the value that they bring. What might be a first step in gaining clarity? Is it going to be slowing down? Is it going to be seeking? What would you suggest to someone if they're doing a lot but aren't clear about who they are, how to be more useful, like we're talking about, so they can't be forgotten? What might be a good first step for them, Rob?
It's funny. It might sound cliche-ish, but the first thing that I would say is believe boldly. Remember who you are. I think, one of the things that I go back to, Neal, is that we are all made in the image of God. And so made in the image of God gives us the ability to create, to think, to lead, to make impact. And so I think we have to believe boldly, first of all, to start there, and I say it's cliche because that's one of the things that we highlight here on this podcast is to believe boldly. The other thing is, as you do that, you're going to do self-discovery. There's the law of awareness says you have to know yourself in order to grow yourself. And so I think take the time to become aware of, and that's some of the work that we help others do, Neal. But I'm just saying this is generally what you need to do, is to become aware of, what your passion is, where your heart is, first of all, and then what you're good at, what your strengths are, and then what you're not so good at. And so those are clues to help you to figure out what direction you can take in life. So you kind of have to become aware of yourself.
But Robin, that awareness scares us, right? Because once we know ourselves, and even as we get clear, you mentioned about the things we aren't good at. Once we get clear about maybe what our less, we're going to say less attractive traits or qualities about ourselves are, that goes back to that maturity piece, and how are we going to lead ourselves with that knowledge, with that awareness, what happens as a result of that. And so then we find ourselves in this circle where you go right back talking about being genuine, right? And I think that authenticity and being genuine, we think of it as being outward, but many times we have to be real with ourselves first before we can ever give the appearance of being genuine with others. So even as we have this conversation, Robin, I'm sitting here and I know we had our show notes, but now I'm going to go back and add to my notes and put some challenges and some questions for myself to say, Neal, are you doing this? Are you, as your dad said, being so useful that when you're not in the room, you're going to be missed and not just simply remembered? So far, I'm loving it. What did you got? Keep going, sir.
It's a great subject, and I actually heard this concept from Rory Vaden, and it struck me, resonated with me, and so I am with you, Neal, in the idea of being more intentional about living this out. And so as we wrap it up, what we're talking about, folks, is be genuine but intentional, and we're talking about be excellent but humble. And above all, be useful in a way that makes life better for others. That's where we should place our focus. Neal?
And I believe that your influence will grow as your usefulness grows, not your fame. So your influence will grow as your usefulness grows. And that starts with simple acts done from a sincere heart.
Yeah. And that's what it's all about. And so maybe, people might not remember everything you say, but they will remember how you showed up with value. People will remember how you showed up adding value without needing a spotlight, right? And so that's the idea. That's the goal. That's the target that we want to go after, is to show up adding value without needing a spotlight.
And then you'll find yourself being in positions where people will want to put you in the spotlight. But here's where we begin. We begin that journey of usefulness by maybe taking 5 or 10 minutes today and reflecting. I know that the reflection period or the slow down period of our days are so important, but these are some of the questions that we want to ask. Where am I helpful but hidden? And that's going to require that honesty, Robin. I think that if I say, where am I helpful? Be like, oh yeah, but where am I hidden in my helpfulness? I think that's a fantastic, valuable question. Where can I show up more with more strategic value, right? Where can I show up with my good heart, but with more strategic value? And many times as good-hearted individuals, as leaders, as givers, we show up, but we don't show up intentionally. We don't show up strategically saying, hey, I want you to see, find, recognize my value. But if we will ask those questions, where am I helpful but hidden? And then where can I show up with more strategic value? I believe that things in our lives begin to shift in our favor.
Right on, Neal. And so to our listeners, we ask you to send this to a friend who is quietly carrying value, and encourage them to stop waiting to be chosen, and for them to start showing up to serve.
Robin, if I would have had this podcast, if we would have had this podcast when you were waiting to be chosen, I would have sent it to you, sir, and said, hey, friend, you're quietly carrying value. Don't wait for them to select you. But your mentor beat me to the punch. And then I would also have to CC myself on this, Robin, simply because many times we think that we don't want to step out of line. We don't want to break protocol. We want to wait until someone says, hey, you come be great, right? But it's so important, exactly what you said. And Robin, I want to tell you, thank you for this episode. And to our listeners, here's what we're going to say to you. Until next time, believe boldly, give freely, and live the big life. And as we always do, we're going to leave you with this. It's that we love you, God loves you, and there's nothing you can do about it. And until the next time you see us or we see you, we're right there with you. Peace.
Peace.